Fear isn't the enemy that we think it is. That enemy would be avoidance. Most people aren't afraid because they're weak. They're afraid because they've learned, often quietly, that fear means something is wrong with them. So when fear shows up, they try to outrun it, distract from it, control it. And over time, that avoidance becomes more limiting than the fear itself. They've entered the forge.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
What's up, everybody? I'm Tyler Van Allen, licensed therapist and trauma-informed clinician, specializing and focusing on our veteran and first responder population. Most importantly, I'm a human. And this is a space, again, for honest conversations that help people carry weight without breaking. You know, today we're gonna get into fear. That's right, fear. F-E-A-R, fear. The little thing that doesn't really exist, but it kind of exists, but it really does exist, but it's really confusing, but we don't want to admit it because it makes us look like a sissy. Fear is one of the most understood human experiences. We're often taught, directly or indirectly, that confidence means fearlessness, that strength means calm, that if fear shows up, something has gone wrong or something is wrong. But fear doesn't mean you're failing. Fear means you're paying attention, and we have become fixated on feeling safe. You know, the problem isn't fear itself. The problem is what happens when we treat fear as something that must be eliminated instead of understood. So this episode isn't about getting rid of fear. It's about changing our relationship to it. And to kind of set the tone to get us in a headspace, right? We're going to revisit a quote we have all heard too many times to count. And honestly, at this point, you know, I'll be honest, when I hear it, I'm just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, I've heard that so much. I've heard this so much. But the quote we're talking about, it was Franklin Roosevelt in his inaugural speech. He was inaugurated March 4th, 1933. And he delivered his first inaugural address during a colossal banking crisis. So that's where this quote is coming from. But it means, I think it means something, you know. I think it's general enough. But for those of you who don't know, he said, so first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. Now, that quote's pretty awesome. Awesome, yeah, sure, if we're talking about restoring faith in banking, whatever that is. But what's cool about this is that he basically just called bullshit on fear, right? It's nameless, it's unreasoning, and most of the time it's unjustified terror, which paralyzes us and causes us to run and not advance. And we become so polarized by that quote. It's so simple. It's in so many history books. It shows up all the time in our lives. But man, one sentence really is spitting a whole lot of facts. So we're going to kind of break that down. So what is fear? And more importantly, what isn't fear? Fear is not a flaw in the system. It is the system. It's the body's way of saying, this matters, right? Fill in the blank matters. But somewhere along the way, many people learn that fear was dangerous, that it would overwhelm them, that it will expose them. It'll make them appear weak. So instead of listening to fear and learning from it and trying to understand what it is, we learn to avoid it. We ran so fast, we didn't spend enough time getting to know it. Is it real fear or is it perceived? And maybe at this point hearing this, you didn't even know there was two different kinds of fear. Well, let's just imagine for a minute. We're walking in the woods at night and we start to think, is a tiger going to jump out at any moment? That's perceived fear. It's conjured to keep us safe. Most of the time, the tiger never shows up, especially in North America. I mean, is it plausible? Perhaps. Tigers are in captivity in the U.S. Perhaps one of the tigers could have escaped, and the 1 in a billion chances of running into it at that moment can't be completely rejected. Sure, I'll buy it. But it's still perception, not acknowledging the reality that there are more facts to support that this encounter with the tiger likely will not happen. It's hard to come by, especially when we are locked into our emotions. The forest is really just getting in the way of the trees. It feels extra unsafe to let our guard down, because what if that tiger actually shows up in front of us? But what if it doesn't, right? If the tiger actually shows up, the fear is gone. Our nervous system is activated and we spring into action. So fear really is a mirage. Don't misunderstand me. Fear is protective and at times healthy. But me personally, when my fear shows up, it is healthy fear because it's likely no longer perceived. It's real. If we heard about a loose tiger in the forest, seen on the same trail we are on, that fear gravitates from perceived to a real and possible threat to our safety. So many of us look at fear as an absolute threat and not something to just acknowledge. But using the metaphorical story of the tiger to understand it, as maybe you likely have, you're able to do that because you didn't run or avoid. You stayed, you listened to me, you tried to understand what I was saying, you studied it, you connected with it, you got to know it a little. And like I said before in previous episodes, to control a thing is really to know a thing. One of my all-time favorite movies as a kid, a movie that I really bonded with my dad over a lot, that I love it to this day, Backdraft. And for our firefighters out there, maybe Backdraft hits too close to home, I don't know, or maybe it's a very kick-ass movie in your repertoire of movies to just chill and relax to. Either way, it's cool. But one of my favorite quotes is from the movie Backdraft, and it's about fire. And Robert De Niro, his character in that movie, said, "Fire, it's a living thing. It breathes, it eats, and it hates. The only way to beat it is to think like it. To know that this flame will spread this way across the door and up across the ceiling, not because of physics of flammable liquids, but because it wants to. Some guys on this job, the fire owns them, makes them fight it on its level. But the only way to truly kill it is to love it a little. In other words, you can't always run. You have to get to know it." Running from fear, that's avoidance. And avoidance shows up in subtle ways. Overworking to stay distracted, staying busy to avoid stillness, numbing through food, screens, substances, noise, sex, chaos, fast motorcycles, whatever. Avoiding difficult conversations, delaying decisions indefinitely. As I said kind of on the last episode, avoidance often feels like relief in the moment, and truthfully it is. Avoidance, again, is like the oxy of emotional pain relief. No one on earth is going to argue that oxy isn't the best pain medication ever created at relieving pain. But like avoidance, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable long term. Over time, avoidance teaches the nervous system that fear is unbearable. And the solution is to keep running. Because when we avoid, we have that relief, right? So avoiding, running, we're conditioning ourselves to run, to get that immediacy, to take that path of least resistance because it feels effective. And, it is for a little bit of time. But as we start to succumb to that conditioning, that's when life starts to shrink. Opportunities narrow, relationships stay just comfortably floating on the surface. The world becomes smaller, not because of fear, but because of avoidance. Now, fear, when approached slowly and intentionally, does something different. It sharpens our awareness. Maybe it clarifies our values. It points us towards what matters most. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the willingness to stay present while fear is there. And that, my friends, is not something you're born with. It's something you practice. It is not something you perfect. It is something that you keep in the forefront of your thinking, ready to activate it when you need to. And the more often you stay instead of escape, the more trust you build in yourself, and the more that we are able to call bullshit on fear. Fear is a mirage. So, if fear has been showing up in your life lately, maybe it's through anxiety, hesitation, restlessness, numbing, it doesn't mean you're regressing or you're broken. It may mean you're standing at the edge of something very important. So instead of asking, how do I make this stop? Maybe just ask, what is this fear asking me to notice? What is this fear asking me to notice? You don't have to answer that to yourself today. Just notice what happens when you don't run. Maybe that tiger never shows up. Do we ever slow down to acknowledge that possibility? Or are we trapped by a ghost called fear that keeps us from seeing that this is just a sheet over a lampshade? You may be asking, well, Tyler, Mr. King Dick with all the degrees, how do I slow down? That's a good question, and that's fair, right? That's fair. So a therapy word for those of you who have ever flirted with therapy, engaged in therapy, you've heard the G word, right? We start by grounding ourselves. The term grounding was developed to describe a physical and emotional state of being in touch with reality and connected to the ground. It's also defined as the ability to move energy into the ground, into the earth, with a well-grounded person having stable feet on the ground, physical and emotional presence. It's us syncing both our mind and our body together, not allowing our body to influence our mind or our mind to influence our body, helping them work as a team, reminding both the mind and body to talk to one another. So to do that, grounding can be simple. We don't have to overthink it. When those feelings of fear or that urge to avoid shows up in myself, something I do is quite simple. And honestly, if you're right there in the thick of it right now, if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes and listen to my voice. I'm going to walk you through exactly what I do. And maybe you might find that helpful. Right now, I want you to just stand completely still, or stay seated, or stay lying wherever you are. We're going to take a slow, deep breath through our nose and exhale through your mouth. Make it a good exhale. Hear that carbon dioxide coming out of your mouth. Make that sound. Feel that surface beneath you, against your feet, against your body. And just simply acknowledge that I'm connected to it. Might be something as simple as, all right, I'm right here in my chair. My butt's planted right here in the chair. My feet are on the ground. That's it. As you breathe, acknowledge that it is actually happening. I may feel scared, I may feel unsafe, but oxygen is still entering my lungs and I am alive. I may feel like I'm spiraling out of control, but how could that be if my feet are actually firmly planted on this earth right now? That's it, friends. How simple is that? That, again, is just a tool. And tools aren't designed to make something perfect. They're not designed to take things away. They're just designed to maybe take a 10 down to a more manageable 6. And sometimes that's when we can activate, right? We can take it from there. As we talk about grounding, blue collar workers, electricians, they understand just how simple but vital grounding is. So if it's difficult to think about grounding in an emotional way, think of it in like electrical. When electrical energy becomes intense and out of control, when that breaker in a panel box blows up, it's important to have some preparations before that chaos is in play. The chaos of electrical energy, when it becomes out of sync in the system, must be rooted and discharged safely. Oftentimes, a steel rod is buried into the ground, and if that energy becomes untamed, we give it a path of least resistance. We let it flow out of the system into the rod and into the ground where it can safely be discharged. This is exactly what grounding is. And again, if the word emotion is difficult to grasp in this process, think of distressful emotions as untamed electricity, a lightning strike that has hit your body. And using tools to ground ourselves instead of run creates a path of least resistance. The idea is not to contain it. It's to discharge it safely. We've all been told time and time again, if we're in an open field, if we're outside and lightning strikes, don't get under a tree, don't run, get low to the ground. Some people even said, grab your ankles and stick your ass in the air, right? Create a path of least resistance, Maybe we can't avoid the electricity, we can't avoid the emotions, but we also have choices to not let it linger inside of us and cause damage as much as possible. We can mitigate that damage by grounding ourselves. Anything can be grounding. Hanging out with your favorite pet, your dog, your sidekick is grounding. For those who have animal companions out there, you can do grounding with your animal, right? It's just about setting the intention that that's what you're doing. We're not just sitting there petting them and we're not thinking about that. as something being simple, right? My large Flemish giant rabbit, Judy, is so grounding for me. So grounding for me. Sometimes, yeah, I'm just in there hanging out with her, scrolling, doing whatever, and I'm in her presence, and that's helpful. But sometimes I need a little something extra. Sometimes I just put the screens away and I simply just focus on being present with her. Maybe I start by petting her. And as I pet her, I pick out a few different things that I can see with my eyes. She's got some really red fur right behind her ears. She's got some really long black whiskers. Her tail has some grayish spots on top, but underneath it's just like snowy white. And then as I've noticed things with my eyes, I start to kind of notice, hey, that fur behind her ears actually feels really soft compared to some of the other fur. The fur on her back is really coarse. She has really puffy, soft, cotton-like balls of fur that kind of run the edges of her feet. And after I've engaged in that feeling, I kind of quiet things down a little bit and I start to listen. I can hear her breathing. And if I put my ear up to her tummy, sometimes I can hear that air, that oxygen coming in and out of her lungs. I can hear her digestion. Maybe I move my nose and I just bury it right there into the fur. And she has her own smell. She doesn't smell bad. She actually kind of smells floral, kind of like flowers. It's pretty weird, but it's very calming. It's very comforting. All of those are grounding tools. That's how we ground ourselves. I'm going to give you a hack for your brain. So our brain, as we all know, is really amazing at a lot of things, but it really sucks at one particular thing. Actually, as a matter of fact, it really can't operate. Our brain really does a very poor job at processing emotions and facts at the same time. It's almost difficult to do that. So in that moment when we're vibing on emotions, we're feeling anxious, we're feeling distressed, we're feeling numb. Sometimes all we have to do is just flood our system, our nervous system, with factual sensory information. Just like what I did with Judy. Just like what we talked about, acknowledging how it feels to have your feet on the ground, listening to the air come out of your mouth, feeling your chest rise. All of that is sensory information. And most of the time, my people, when I work with them and we go through this process, this grounding process of tools, I'll usually challenge them to a question and I'll say, when we were trying to excavate some factual sensory information there, where else was your mind? And they really look at me like I'm crazy, like it's a trick question or something. I'm like, no, I'm asking. This is not a joke. This is not a trick. And the most common answer I hear is, well, nothing. I was just searching for that information that you were asking me to recall to myself. Perfect. That's what it's designed to do. Welcome to your first brain hack. And as veterans and first responders, you guys are always like kind of in fight or flight. And that's part of what makes you kick ass. And that's what makes you great at what you do. But in that moment, you don't have to slow down your role. You can just simply trickle in some of that sensory stuff that keeps you locked into the present without escaping somewhere else. And that can be a powerful thing. That can be a really simple tool, but an effective tool to stay present, to not avoid. Acknowledge that fear is there. But also, it's okay to call bullshit on it. All right, it's fear. Is it real? Is it perceived? Most of the time it's perceived. When it becomes real, we're not really vibing off of it emotionally. We're activating into action. That's kind of how you know if it's different, right? As you guys know, every episode ends with a simple ritual. And it's a reminder that growth is built through small, intentional actions. Words mean nothing. Words are cool, and that's a good start. But intentional actions is what moves the needle. So every guest on this show, I have a huge oak beam and I have some metal spikes. Every guest on this show, or every ending to this podcast, we ask the question, right? And if you guys have been following, you know what the question is. You know what I'm about to say. For those of you that's new, what are we building right now that requires us to stay present, even when fears show up? What are we building right now that we refuse to abandon? Fear doesn't mean stop. Sometimes it means stay. Folks, if you're enjoying the content so far, keep it locked. Coming very, very soon. It's still in the works, not too much longer to have to wait. The Warrior's Manual is a manual that is being created for you, for me, a tool that sort of lines up with this podcast. It is 3 months, a weekly manual for you to get some grounding tools that actually work and function. There's prompts, there's quotes, things to help you forge a path ahead. It's not a self-help book per se. It's not some cheesy book filled with lots of psychobabble worksheets. Just real stuff for real people who are looking to get to know themselves again, who are looking for a little bit of clarity and ways that they can help themselves and put some of this weight down. So coming soon, our website is currently being built as we speak. The Warrior's Manual will be on Amazon. There's going to be hard copies. It'll be available right through our website. We also have a digital copy. So for me personally, I love the hard copy. There's something about putting pen to paper that really is just very grounding. But for those of you, we have a digital copy that's going to be available. You can pull that right up on your phone, right up on your iPad, on your computer, and you can actually work through it in that sense too. So keep it locked. Definitely we'll have more information to come on the Warrior's Manual. Thanks so much. So in closing today, I deeply appreciate you guys so much. You know, I created the Forge primarily for veterans and first responders, but you know, nurses, hospital workers, healthcare professionals, single mothers, single fathers, divorced people. Aren't all these people warriors to some degree? Yeah, damn right we are. So, just a reminder, fear's going to show up again. Don't delude yourself into thinking it won't. But when it does, that's not a failure. That's life asking you to stay with it, stay in it, stay engaged. You don't have to eliminate fear to move forward. You just have to stop letting avoidance decide for you. You decide. You're the expert of your life. Fucking act like it. This is the Forge, and you're allowed to stay. Thanks so much. Take care. Social media isn't a replacement for therapy, and while I am a therapist, I am not your therapist. Please reach out to your local resources or call 988 if you are in crisis. This is educational content only, not therapy or a replacement for it. Rather, a little education for you along your way, along the journey.
In chaos will thrive!